This is the Detroit Sports Podcast Network.
Do you play FanDuel and feel like you aren't creating consistent money-making lineups? Go over to the DFS Doctors on Twitter at the DFS Doctors and DM them with promo code Detroit Sports to get a free trial for their analytically formulated 70% lifetime profit rate NFL and NBA lineups. The whole purpose of playing daily fantasy sports is to get out there and compete and give yourself a chance to win. So go over to the DFS Doctors. Let them help you. They have analysts on staff that look at the best optimal lineup that you can put out there to win money. So why not take advantage? At the DFS Doctors, promo code Detroit Sports.
CBD is a game changer sweeping the nation. This hemp extract is the natural way to elevate your mood, eliminate aches and pains, reduce anxiety, and keep you sleeping all night long. It can even cut your workout recovery time in half. Get in the game today with 20% off all orders of CBD and lavender products from Lavender Lane, a lavender farm located right here in Milan, Michigan. Just go to lavenderlanemi.com today and enter coupon code Detroit for 20% off your entire order. Guys, look, these amazing products are infused with calming lavender to maximize their effectiveness, meaning your CBD items only take minutes to take effect, which is way quicker than those pills you were about to swallow. On top of it, they are perfect for men and women. Lavender Lane has lab-tested CBD creams, tinctures, and roll-ons that are perfect for any situation, even if you're on the go. Put your health back in your hands by heading over to lavenderlanemi.com and entering coupon code Detroit for 20% off your entire order of CBD and lavender products. What do you have to lose? Your satisfaction is guaranteed or your money back. So if you need lavender gifts for your loved ones or just looking for the natural way to ease your discomfort with CBD, go to lavenderlanemi.com and use coupon code Detroit to unlock these miraculous benefits of CBD and lavender. That's lavenderlanemi.com. And remember, use coupon code DETROIT for 20% off your CBD and lavender products from Michigan's own Lavender Lane.
Is there a sports podcast in Detroit that people are talking about?
Hey, everybody, this is Freddie Cohen of ESPN Radio. When I'm not talking about breaking news or breaking news on ESPN Radio, I'm always a fan and listen to the Detroit Sports Podcast, and so should you.
Happy New Year, everybody. Welcome to the latest edition of the DocNJock podcast. I am the Doc, John Macaroon, joining me, my cousin in studio, Adam, the Jock Strozinski. Can't wait to record this podcast, brother.
What's going on, man? Happy New Year.
It's all good, man. It was a good time. Couple days off. Now we're back in studio. We have to light it up. We have to talk about the Detroit Lions, the way the season ended, the season-ending pressers from Matt Patricia and Bob Quinn. We got to dive into that because, again, the Lions try to put out a good message of hope and that we're going to figure things out, and everybody's upset, highly frustrated regarding what has happened since the season has ended, even on Sunday. Another loss. You know, the Lions end the season, on a 9-game losing streak, so we're going to figure all that out, sift through all the riffraff, and figure out what the hell's going on with this organization that now sits with the third pick in the NFL draft. And in the second half of the podcast, you might notice that the Doc is a little bit, excited and a little bit more pep in his step. Look, not that I want bad things to happen to Michigan, but at the end of the day, when Michigan loses...
You want bad things to happen to Michigan. Come on.
Yeah. And when they lose in that fashion, where the guy that was brought in to kind of take over the quarterback position fails and misses on pass after pass, and everyone's like, oh my God, this was your senior. This was your guy that's supposed to kind of, in those games where Alabama's not, bringing all their best talent to the table, you didn't get it done. So we'll talk about all that next. And what does it mean for Michigan going forward? Because a 4-loss season probably is not sitting well with my cousin. But as we talk today, what's going on, man? How was your New Year's? Did you have a good time?
Oh yeah, I had a really nice time. I want to say Happy New Year to everybody. I'm dealing with a little throat something or another. It's a little bit scratchy, and I feel like I got the sickness coming on.
Why?
I don't know what the hell's going on here. But no, New Year's was fun, man. I ended up going to a really nice dinner with my sister.
Nice.
It was fantastic. It was way too expensive, though. My sister is like extra bougie, and I'm not that guy. I'm like the kind of guy who goes just a hole in the wall, drinks a shot and a beer, and calls it a day. My sister is very hoity-toity. So dinner was great, though. I had a fantastic time with really, really good people. So it was cool. What'd you end up doing? Did you end up staying home with the kids?
Yes. Was invited out for a dinner and then dessert type thing at a house, but we were like, you know what, Andrea? Feeling old, kind of working hard, kind of just want to take these next couple of days to do nothing. She's like, yeah, probably the same thing. So like an old person, you know you're old when this happens. You know, you're hanging with the kids, watching New Year's Rockin' Eve on Channel 7, and then 9:30, 10 hits, and they're fading, and then you're fading. So both the wife and I are out. We napped.
You didn't stay up to the ball drop?
I woke up. So
Okay.
I napped from 10 to 11:45.
Nap.
I took a nap, and that's what happened because I woke up 11:45. I'm like, Andrea, the ball's dropping. So we stayed up. We made it to the new year, and then I stayed up till 1, 2 o'clock and did my thing. But when you get older, you just kind of want to keep it chill. And sometimes, I told her, I'm like, you know what? If we go out, we're probably not going to make it because, you know, with the kid schedule and the way things are that I've become now a really old person where I'm waking up 6 a.m. and trying to get into bed by 10:30. That's what happens when you hit 40, man.
Did the kids didn't make it then?
No,
Kids were done.
They were done at 10:15. They wanted to. They were disappointed, but neither my sister's kids or mine made it to midnight. And actually, at the end of the day, you don't want the kids staying up because that throws off their rhythm, and then they're just cranky as hell the next day. So quiet is the way I want to go the next couple years. I had my fun in my 30s. I remember those days where you get drunk, and there was one year that I got so drunk that I left the venue, and people had to look for me because I was just wandering outside talking to people, and it was at the Royal Park Place Hotel.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
That's a really nice place.
Yeah, so I went to a party, dancing on the tables, and got so drunk that I left the venue, and people were like, where is he? And, you know, I just was wandering around, you know, Royal. I was wandering around there in Rochester trying to figure out, you know, what's going on and stuff like that. So I had my fun with that, but now I just want to relax and recharge for what we're going to do here, man. I'm excited.
I'll tell you a story about that place off air.
Okay.
About something that happened in an elevator to this guy.
Oh, nice. Good times there.
It was all right.
You left your mark, sort of.
It's kind of.
All right, cuz the end of the year happened, another loss. Look, at the end of the day, it was academic. Look, I'm not Bob Quinn. I'm not going to sit here and give the Lions credit for being in the game against Green Bay. At the end of the day, I think Green Bay took the Lions pretty lightly. They came in, and Aaron Rodgers played a piss-poor game. And look, at the end of the day, the Lions fans showed out. It wasn't as – look, there were a lot of Green Bay fans there at Ford Field, but the Lions fans showed out, and they were cheering, and they were battling with the Green Bay fans that were in attendance. And it was a competitive game. It was nice to see a little bit of a competitive type situation. But at the end of the day, you know, people were writing, oh, my God, you know, and I was too, on Twitter talking about the Lions are going to blow their draft pick. But throughout the game, you knew that if they had indeed won the game, they were only going to
It kind
draft
of felt
the fourth.
like that, though.
Yeah, they were only going to draft
right
the fourth.
up to like 5 minutes left in the fourth. It felt like they were going to blow that draft spot.
But again, the Lions blew the lead.
They did.
Aaron Rodgers finally picked it up a little bit. All he had to do was play like a B- game, a C game, and the Green Bay Packers were able to win. And that stat is so fascinating. 2 games played against the Lions, they lead for 0 minutes, and they win both.
Yep.
That's how it goes for the Lions.
Aaron Rodgers played such a bad half, maybe 3/4 of football against the Detroit Lions on Sunday. It was astounding. You're watching him just look like he's struggling. Honestly, it felt like he was at the end of his career. You're like, oh, okay, cool. Like, it's over. You know, Tom Brady has not looked like Tom Brady at certain points this year. And everybody's starting to basically etch his headstone right now. Like, Tom Brady from here to here, dunzo. But Aaron Rodgers looked really, really similar. Didn't look like that elite quarterback through most of that game. And then does just enough to turn it on and to snatch a win in the final seconds of the game. And, I mean, thank God they did. If you're a Lions fan right now, you need to applaud Aaron Rodgers. You need to applaud Mason Crosby.
Thank you.
You need to applaud the Green Bay Packers because it helped keep you in a draft spot where you might actually get something relevant that could come in and help this team. It's going to be really interesting, though, because I think if the Lions were to find themselves in position 1 or 2, there was no way they were going to get to 1. But if they found themselves in draft position number 2, I almost think it's a no-brainer, right? You're basically taking one of 2 guys there. Whichever guy's left on the board, you're taking him. When you get to 3, the draft really kind of opens up. And depending on what Tua decides on January 6th, it could make things really, really difficult for you. Now, I think drafting at 3, there's a bit of there are a couple things you can do here, right? Like there are certain doors that you can walk through. You can either draft a player here or you can trade back. You can do a couple different things, but you're going to have to really count on Bob Quinn and Matt Patricia to nail this draft. And in both of our estimations, they've not done a very good job thus far. Their tenure at drafting has been very sketchy, to put it mildly. They've have more misses than they have hits, and it's one of those things where I don't think I trust either one of these guys, and I definitely don't trust either one of these guys working in unison, which is what you need with your head coach and your general manager.
It seems like if the Lions are going to trade back, you'd want to trade with the Raiders because they got 2 first-rounders. You can get, I think, the 12th pick and
12th and 19th.
12th and 19th. You'd have an opportunity to get 2 guys, and that's the best situation. But I don't know if the Raiders have something they want really at 3 so bad that they're going to be willing to part ways because the Raiders are in a good spot.
What if Tua does decide to go? And you know how John Gruden is fixated on quarterbacks.
On Tua, though?
I don't believe he likes Derek Carr. I don't think he is 100% sold on him.
But then you'd think they just go up to 1. Just say, okay, we'll give you 12, 19, and maybe
Take
2
Joe
more.
Burrow.
Yeah, exactly. Just go up and get the best guy. Why would you go and get I feel like Tua's stock is going to drop because at the end of the day, your health is so important. I think that Tua, at the end of the day, if he makes the best decision for him, he should go back to Alabama.
Yeah, I was going to ask you, do you think he should go back?
He should go back because you're injured. You want to show everybody that you're the guy and that the injury is not going to hinder you. And then you play one more year. Alabama's going to be stacked. You're probably going to be super protected knowing that you have this injury situation. Why not go out and be guaranteed to be number 1?
Yeah.
And then you don't end up with, probably a really horrible situation that you could be in now where, but, for him, he might end up on a better team if he does, drop to maybe 14, 15.
Look at Lamar.
Exactly.
Right? Lamar Jackson. This is a guy who, playing out of this world this year, he played pretty good, last year when he was inserted in certain games, and this year he's taken it to a whole new level, and he fell, and Baltimore picked him up in best landing spot for that guy.
So now the good situation was at the end of the year, people were just wondering, okay, when's Bob Quinn going to talk? Because he generally speaks twice a year, and the first time that he'll speak will be typically the week after the season. So we had known, and I was talking to you, I'm like, okay, when's he going to talk? I can't wait for this one. And immediately we start to realize on Sunday at the Lions game that he's going to talk on Monday because Dan Miller and the radio station 97.1, they talked about it, and they said, okay, Monday's going to be the day. So I'm excited. I'm like, okay, good. This is actually pretty good in terms of my schedule because I can backload all the podcasting, all my stuff to later in the week. So I'm there, and it was a full day, and it was fascinating to be at a day where it was the locker room early in the afternoon, and then Matt Patricia, and then Bob Quinn. And when he walks in, it's kind of like, oh, people have to address so much stuff with Bob Quinn because he doesn't talk. So you're talking about stuff from the season with Quandre Diggs, what happened, his opening statement, the decision, what's going to happen in terms of the mandate given for Quinn and Patricia to get to the playoffs, a win-now situation. So there was a lot. And that half hour flew by. I was like, oh my gosh, I really wish he would have given an hour. But then he would have been diving into stuff like nobody asked him about Tease Tabor, which I think I probably should have asked about in terms of like, hey, you said you scouted this guy the most ever, and he doesn't even make your roster coming out of training camp this year. So it was fascinating in that Matt Patricia and Bob Quinn now have doubled down and locked it down, and they're saying the same things in terms of, hey, now, if you really dive into, the quotes and what they say, they did, Matt Patricia at least said, look, yeah, in his opening statement, which went 8 minutes, Matt Patricia did say, we had too many penalties, there were not enough plays that were made in crunch time. He said, I don't care about the yards in my defense. I care about when the time comes and there's a critical play that needs to be made, we never made it, and we got to figure out why that happened. And he said, we're going to take a comprehensive look, but the dynamic that is causing the biggest rift between someone like myself, the fans, and guys like Quinn and Patricia is they actually believe they're close. They're like, we put something down in place with this fight, and the team never gave up. And look, Bob Quinn looked at the media and said, none of you guys thought we were going to be in that game or win. And look, we had all these guys, and we were within this much of winning the game. But I think nobody really was going to tell him, look, Bob, at the end of the day, yeah, these are NFL athletes, and they're going to compete, But at the end of the day, the Lions have never consistently gotten over the hump. So you're just one of another regime that's come in here and not done the job. At the end of the day, we're not expecting, I know that, fans are going to think that you're going to get blown out every game. But in the NFL, if you put out, reasonable competition and guys that can play NFL football, you're going to be in the game. It's competitive. So you guys touting that, hey, we fought hard and we're competitive, rings hollow to anyone listening to it, because that's really step one, just to have the job. The next step is you guys don't take your talent. That people think that, the guys that you had when Stafford went down could have at least got a win, something, nothing. And so that's the biggest issue that people said was, you can't make excuses when you say you're not going to make excuses. He talked about the injury. He shouldn't have talked about it at all. He should have just really said, and people are wondering, okay, those that are on the side of, hey, the media is being hypercritical. What did you want Bob Quinn to say? All he had to say was, in this form, the season was terrible. It's my job now, based on what my situation is, to get this right. I have the draft. I have free agency. I'm going to work my ass off to put out a product that next year will get to the playoffs. Because he's asked, what's the timeline? And I thought the point was made, and it's very clear. When the ownership tells you the timeline is you better be in the playoffs next year, your answer better be, you know what? My job this offseason is to work tirelessly to get the Lions in the playoffs next year. Because at the end of the day, if it doesn't happen, you're fired. So just put it on yourself. You've been here 4 years. Year 5's coming up. If you don't make the playoffs, you're likely not going to be here anyway. So just put it on the team and say, it's our job, year 3 of Matt Patricia, to be in the playoffs and to actually meet up to the standard that I said when I fired Jim Caldwell. But instead, he goes into this, well, we got to evaluate everything. We got to look at everything, and I'm going to watch all the games. And he didn't give any answers. At the end of the day, people are just calling him out for lying and not being forthright with what they're doing. And at the end of the day, that's par for the course with what they do. And that's why people are mad, because all of a sudden the next day you realize that you're going to fire 6 coaches.
Well, yeah, that's the thing.
Next day,
we're going to take a long-term look at what's been going on, what went wrong with the season. And then less than 24
everybody
hours,
knows.
You fire 6 coaches. And you don't even fire the defensive coordinator.
The scheme's not good enough. The talent's not good enough. You have a team that has certain players that can be more aggressive, and you never chose to do it until late in the season. So the problem is a combination of coaching and talent, and it's one of those things where I understand there's certain things you don't want to talk about, but the fan base needs something. And at the end of the day, all they had to do, first day after the season, thank you, Mr. Pasqualoni. I know you're my mentor. I know that we have this relationship. Bye-bye.
Yeah.
You don't make the signature move that would have just calmed everything down. The Lions don't do things right. Paul Pasqualoni doesn't deserve a job. He's 70 years old. He's fine. Look, you should have paid him enough in the last 2 years to just take care of him. Look, Paul, it's not working out. Week 6, Paul, look, you understand. Look, take care of him. Yep. Do something else. Or immediately just come out and say, Paul Pasqualoni is now special advisor to the defense. We will have a new defensive coordinator. You fire everyone else but the head guy of the worst unit on the team. Come on, man. Look, I know there's loyalty, but at the end of the day, there's football smarts and there's football idiocy. And to not fire Paul Pasqualoni the second the season ended, you could have did it Sunday. You calm down the whole week.
Yep.
Fire the guy that's the head of the world. I mean, I know it's Matt Patricia's defense, but that's the figurehead. And Paul Pasqualoni.
Dude, you blew out the strength and conditioning coach. You mean to tell me that those athletes weren't in condition or in shape to play football? No. You were sending a message to other guys. Here's the thing. You want to send a big message? Fire the guy who's in charge of the worst unit on the football team. The unit that repeatedly got abused. The unit that repeatedly let this team down. You had a third-string quarterback leading this team, and they were still in games up until right around the fourth quarter for multiple games where that defense just collapsed. That's Paul Pasqualoni. Actually, it's Matt Patricia, because we both believe that Matt Patricia is calling the shots for this defense, but Paul Pasqualoni is the figurehead of what goes on. So you know what? You remove the figurehead and you start from scratch. You bring
you bring in a younger guy that can at least bring up some information that might be more aggressive, that might be a little bit more insightful along the lines of what could help the defense. At the end of the day, Matt Patricia can't do it all.
All right, but here's the thing, right? That's what good leaders do. Good leaders find people who will help support them and help bring different points of view and help them create and build, right? Matt Patricia doesn't want that. Matt Patricia wants to run his defense. And I'm using finger quotes here, his defense. He wants to give up 1,000 yards every game, but he wants the defense to make critical plays at critical times. Well, cool. You know what?
You know how hard that is?
I found that guys who are a little bit fresher because they're getting off the field, because they're not giving up 1,000 yards a game,
Play better defense.
can usually make that critical play in crunch time. And that's not on their strength and conditioning coach. It's on their defensive coordinator for leaving them out there the whole damn time.
And it's up to the general manager to put guys out there that actually are adaptable and have a little bit more talent. You don't bring in Rashaan Melvin, who gives up 1 million plays, or Justin Coleman, pay him so much money, and then he has only a half of a good season. See, that's the problem, and they can't admit it. They can't point the finger at themselves publicly. So at the end of the day,
dude, you paid Coleman a ton of money. Now, I'll tell you this much, right?
That was bad.
I like Justin Coleman. I think he's a very good player. I think he fills his role perfectly. The thing is,
you overpaid to get him. It's not a value of contract. Yeah,
is insane.
You make him the highest priced slot corner in the NFL. It's not done right. And at the end of the day, when you look at the Lions defense, I still hold out hope that they're waiting for one of the playoffs, one of the staffers from the teams that are in the playoffs to maybe come free, and they'll look at that, and then they will actually not let go of Paul Pasqualoni, that the odds-on situation that's going to happen is he's going to be reshifted. I don't think Pasqualoni will be the defensive coordinator next year. I just don't think that the Lions can be that obtuse. No, you can't. The Lions can't be that obtuse. They can't be that negligent and put out the same guy. The same regime, you would have probably so much negativity that it would be really too much to handle, because anytime that the defense doesn't make a play, you're going to say, hey, Matt Patricia didn't cut out his boy or anything like that.
I'm not even sure how you could
sell that.
Justify that to
anybody.
The fan base.
You couldn't justify that to anybody.
Like, hey guys, we had the second worst defense in all of the NFL this year. But you know what? We're going to keep the defensive coordinator, and we're going to let Matt Patricia take a more hands-on approach.
Right.
And he's going to be a little bit more, he's like involved in all of it. Like, we all know no, what you have to do here is blow out the old man and then bring somebody else in who's a little bit younger, and probably, because we talked about this before. We talked about this with Jim Harbaugh. This was one of the things about Jim Harbaugh that wanted me to get them to have an offensive coordinator. Jim Harbaugh was so engrossed in everything offensive that he sometimes would neglect other duties. There's so much for a head coach that goes on. I don't think the average fan, I don't think the average person really realizes. Like, the head coach has to be involved with everything that's going on. So if you have an injured player, or you got to talk to a certain subset of a certain position group. So say your offense is struggling, you need to go talk to the O-line. Well, you're going to do that while the defense is on the field. Now, if you're Matt Patricia and you're running that defense, you can't go talk to the O-line because you're running the defense. That's why you have a defensive coordinator that you put in charge and that you trust to make the plays. And while that's going on, you can look at it vice versa, right? So defense is out there just getting just manhandling whatever offense is going on, and you need to get your special teams kind of situated, and maybe there's a special formation that you want to roll out. You can't be so engrossed in what's going on with that defense that you're now neglecting your special teams, and you're not going to be able to put the guys out there in a certain bunch or a certain formation that you realize will work and help you get points immediately. So as a head coach, what you have to do is you sometimes have to remove yourself. It's more addition by subtraction. You have to sometimes remove yourself from those play calling duties and those play calling abilities to kind of take a more overseeing approach, more of a mid-level management approach, where you're kind of watching everything. You've got everything going into your headset. You know all the plays that are being called. If there's something that you want changed, you can just pull your little mouthpiece down and you could say, hey, check that. Maybe look at this, and then put it back up, and let your defensive coordinator, or your offensive coordinator, or your special teams coordinator call what has to be called to put those guys in a better spot, while you kind of go off and you handle something else, or you are dialed in on something else. Maybe you quickly notice something with I don't know, the offensive line of the Minnesota Vikings. You notice that when it's going to be a run play, you notice that the offensive line tends to lean a little bit more forward. These are subtle things. These are little things that most of the time guys that are on the field will notice. I remember Mike Golick talking about how when guys would put their hands in the dirt, you knew if they were rushing because you could see the whites of their knuckles. Like, they would lean forward on their hands Look, you're looking at me like I'm crazy, but like I'm telling you, and it's true, because if you like put a little bit of pressure on your hand, put your hand down on a table and put a little bit of pressure on it, you'll see your knuckles go a little bit white. It's because you're bracing to use your hand to push off, to sit there and get a little bit of a rush. So, it's little things like that. Maybe you notice, like I said, the Minnesota Vikings O-line just kind of leans forward a little bit, or maybe they have a little bit of a different stance. Those are things that your head coach should know, so he can run back to his defense and say, hey, guys, this is what's going on. We need to be aware of this. You know what's coming, so everybody stack the box, hit it hard. Let's go. Contain. Dalvin Cook can't get outside. Stop him for -2 yards, and next thing you know, you made that critical play that he was talking about.
The onus that ownership has put on these guys probably changes things up a little bit, where prior to them coming back, we probably would have assumed that Darius Slay was going to be gone. Now, I think that, some people are assuming that Graham Glasgow is probably going to be gone, and unfortunately, that's probably going to be the case. I think A'Shawn and Glasgow are going to be gone, but Slay should come back, which I think then plays into what you could do at 3 if Chase Young is gone at number 2, which means that you can have Darius Slay on one side and you can bring in Jeffrey Okudah, and that can kind of solidify the secondary a little bit. And so I think that kind of plays into some changes that the Lions are going to have to make. And I think that Darius Slay has to come back. There's no way that you let this guy go, especially with Aaron Rodgers, everybody on his birthday telling him, hey, you're the greatest of all time, you're great, you're doing this, and you're someone that is productive. Look, is he the greatest of all time? No, he is slipping. So you maybe just tack on one extra year, and you play to him wanting to stay in Detroit. Otherwise, you just make him play out his contract. You bring back Darius Slay. You need him, because I don't see a situation in which you can actually get better by taking out Darius Slay, taking out Graham Glasgow, and then trying to fill in. I don't see progress. I see you trying to then get back to level. So I think Slay's coming back, and I think you'll see A'Shawn Robinson and Graham Glasgow go, not because they don't want to keep Glasgow, but he's going to command a nice hefty $9 million a year salary, and I think in that position they want to maybe allocate funds differently. So Glasgow's going to be gone.
What sucks there is
he was productive. He was good.
Out
of
everybody on the O-line, he's the one that we've talked about the least. And if you're a good offensive lineman, you don't get talked about.
He did his job.
He's been the one whether he be playing guard or whether he be playing center, he's been talked about very, very rarely.
Look,
that was a 3rd-round pick too.
We spent 25 minutes criticizing the Lions. If there's an opportunity for them to turn things around, if maybe they hit on this draft pick, maybe they trade and get multiple picks, if they get Derek Brown, if they insert him from Auburn and he's on that defensive line, now you have an opportunity. If you go down the list and you get AJ Epinesa, that's not bad too, because he's someone that actually made plays in a bowl game, has the credentials to do some things. I think that because they're drafting at 3, they're not going to mess it up. The only way they would mess it up in terms of really elevating people's anxieties if they indeed take a quarterback, which would shock everybody.
Let's say you could totally mess this up.
No, I don't think so. I think
Tua could declare for the draft.
You're not taking Tua,
and you could take Tua at 3.
I'm saying now I will fall out.
Tua
way.
Not be healthy enough.
Hell no. They're not drafting
Tua. Or you can totally mess it up.
Yeah.
Tua declares for the draft. He ends up falling to, 5. I'd have to see who's drafting at 5. Falls to 5, and next thing you know, he's a Hall of Fame quarterback.
Yeah.
He's Aaron Rodgers, and he torments you for the next, 100 years.
And you still, in 2026, go, Stafford, year 16, man. We got it. We're doing it. I think he's going to be there.
Year 16.
Year 16. I think Stafford, if he makes it 15 years with the Lions with no playoffs, I think it'll be documentary worthy. We might have to make it where we say, this guy, this contract, this player embodies everything that's wrong with the Lions. A guy that had no success for 15 years, got a couple extensions, and you still have fans going, it's the nicest guy ever. We can't let go of this guy. Did you see we lost all the games out of him?
This is the problem. I don't think Matt Stafford's necessarily the problem.
No.
It's we can save that conversation for a different day. I get what you're saying, though. But you're right. Darius Slay will probably be back.
So if you hit on the draft,
unless the Raiders want him, and then you trade,
hit on the draft,
get that second pick.
The schedule is a little bit lighter. As you're playing a last place schedule, you get off to a good start. This team now, you could in a year from now look at a team that's in the playoffs but doesn't win. So I'll put it to you this way: if they meet the goal of playoff contention, but don't secure the victory. They get to the game, down to the wire, maybe a call goes against them, similar to Dallas, and the Lions lose like 27-26, and the defense kind of blows it, and they don't make the play, or Stafford has that drive again, and they have that chance, they're only down a point, and they something happens, and the ball gets knocked out, and a player makes a key play. Would you bring those guys back if they make the playoffs next year, but no W? Playoffs, they meet the goal, but no W. I think you'd have to.
See,
for me, it's playoffs or bust. That's my onus. Is that
gotcha.
Because winning that playoff game sometimes can be challenging, and it'll be really difficult to win the division. So I think the odds are in favor is that they're not going to be back and they're going to not make the playoffs. But if they make the playoffs, somewhat competitive, I think you get year 4.
See, mine's a little bit more all encompassing, right? I want to see what happens with the draft, and if you get anybody who, I don't know, who performs this year from this draft class. On top of that, I want to see the maturation of a guy like Jelani Tavai or a couple other guys that were picked up maybe last year or even the year before, because it can't all just be based on one season, right? It's got to be, okay, how are your guys performing that you drafted? What are your draft grades? And then when you lose, how do you lose? I mean, because you can just get blown out in a game. It just not be anywhere close. Or there could be a game where it's really close and you just kind of lose because, I don't know, you go back and you look at that Green Bay game from earlier in the season, they really should have won that game. They were robbed of a win there with 2 phantom fouls on Trey Flowers, all right? But you look at this last Green Bay game, I think we both agree that was because Green Bay just didn't show up. Green Bay wasn't there to play. Detroit should have been blown out of that game, but Green Bay was like, we'll turn it on when we feel like it. And then they turned it on the last 7 minutes of the fourth quarter, and you ended up losing that game. So even though that game was within a field goal, it was never really ever that close. Do you know what I'm saying? Whereas the other game where they lost by, I think it was 1 point on a Mason Crosby field goal, that game they really should have won. So I think you have to kind of look into the games, delve into them a little bit more, and take a little bit of a harder look. I mean, because if you're just getting blown out in your losses, but you're beating bad teams, because again, you have a last place schedule, and you're going to Wayne Fonts your way into the playoffs, I think we have a bit of an issue. Because there have been times where this team has done things like that, and I've looked at you, and I'm like, do you have any confidence that this team is building in the right direction? And you're like, no. And if that's the case, then why should you be given another year? How can we justify giving you another year? I don't think you can. I get what you're saying about playoffs or bust, and I think there's something interesting. There's a bunch of new teams that are going into the playoffs this year. Teams like the 49ers, the Packers, the Vikings, the Titans, the Bills. These are all teams that weren't there last year. So you can turn it around in 1 year. I want to know what you would take, though, from those teams I just named and help this Lions team build with one of those pieces.
See, here's the tough part with the Lions, okay? Copying other organizations just doesn't seem to work.
No, you're absolutely right.
What I want to see, actually, okay?
But I think that there is a commonality between these 5 teams.
Yeah, and the commonality is the balance between the offense and the defense, the ability to make critical plays. Look, just look at the game, when it was the 49ers and the Seahawks. The 49ers have the ball last. They throw it to George Kittle. He runs it for 40 yards, and they win the game. Mm-hmm. It's only a handful of plays. So for whatever reason, the Lions just in the last decade have not made that critical play consistently enough outside of that 1 year when Stafford, I think it was Bob Quinn's first year, 8 comeback victories. And this year was obviously the opposite of that, where there was a lot of comebacks for the opponents. I think what the Lions need to do is actually in those moments, they got to find ways to actually make that critical play. And they actually, in terms of probably, the offense did a good job decently. I'd say that if they can stay on the field healthy, if Matt Patricia can figure out how to balance the need for pressure and getting there versus, whatever he describes as complementary football on the defense in terms of the pass rush and the secondary, if they can figure it out, you can buy into the notion that this team can start the process of winning some of these closer games. I think that what has to happen is the talent on the field's got to be a lot better. They got to stop with the boneheaded mistakes. They got to, at the end of the day, have Stafford be healthy and play at a decent level. So, yeah, it sounds hopeful, but there is what you see in a foundational spot of like, okay, they can now go from competing to executing at the highest level. That's the gap, is they have the system in place now. It's going to be year 3. A lot of people are going to be aware of it. Now you got to bring in more guys to actually go out there and execute it. And at the end of the day, you got to step up and sometimes put the nail in the coffin when you're leading and get that touchdown to extend the lead to 10 points instead of always playing from behind and giving up that touchdown and then having Stafford, be forced to try and bring the team back. So it sounds tough, but at the end of the day, I think that the Lions' schedule next year, at least currently when you look at it, sets up for at least 7 wins off the bat. If you stay healthy, you got 7 wins there. It's those 3 extra wins you got to pull out, maybe against the Bears and then maybe against the teams like Arizona. You don't get a tie, you get a win. I just think that there's something there that you can argue with the draft and free agency. You got damn near $50 million. You're probably going to go out there and land someone on the defense that's going to be impactful.
I mean, you would hope so.
I think so. So I'm calling for at least 7 to 8 wins, and then you go from there and you see if you can execute in those critical moments. And you got to remember, Stafford will be back too, and look what he was doing. He's going to have another year with Darrell Bevel. I have to expect that TJ Hawkinson and Jesse James will be utilized a little bit better. You got now maybe Bo Scarborough and Kerryon Johnson, if they stay healthy for a whole season, that they maybe can do some things. The offense will move the ball. It's, in the name of being positive, it's not as far away as people think, but at the end of the day, what ends up happening is something happens, for whatever reason this year, it was the Green Bay game when you were in it and you get the phantom Trey Flowers calls. Something has to, happen in terms of when something shitty happens that you just overcome it. And I think that next year might be that year where they get to, my sense is that they will be very, very close competing for the playoffs, but they're going to be put to the ultimate test of what do we do next. And at the end of the day, you have to bet on them coming back for year 4 because the schedule is kind of light. I think they have enough talent and enough ability to reshape that roster in 1 year to get to the postseason. Get the W, that might be a stretch, but I think, remember, playoff contention. The ownership didn't say playoff win, and I think just getting to the playoffs will be just enough for these Lions.
See, for me, it's a little bit different. It is all about working that front 7. If you look at the 49ers, you look at the Tennessee Titans, you look at the Minnesota Vikings, you look at the Green Bay Packers, you look at the Buffalo Bills, you look at all of these teams, their front 7 are so impactful. They disrupt the quarterback. They help contain the run. They're making those critical plays, right? So I think you have to find some way in roughly a year, which will be difficult. And you do have some pieces here. If you believe Trey Flowers is a difference maker, then you do have some pieces here. If you believe that Jelani Tavai is a difference maker, you have some pieces here in that front 7. But you need to build around that front 7. You have to make that front 7 better. When John Lynch and Kyle Shanahan took over the San Francisco 49ers, their thing was we have to build a savage defensive line. Have to. And if you look at what they've done, they've got Nick Bosa, Sheldon Day, DeForest Buckner, Eric Armstead. That's their D line, right? And then you just look at the depth on this, right? Anthony Zettel. Anthony Zettel was a starter here in Detroit, all right? Solomon Thomas was a 3rd overall pick by, I believe it was the 49ers or by the New Orleans Saints. I'd have to go back and double check, but he was a 3rd overall pick. You've got D Ford. D Ford played in a pivotal game last year. Do you know what I'm saying? In the playoffs, you have guys who, like, their depth for their front line is so sick. Like I mentioned, there's a starter who's a backup player on San Francisco's D line. It just blows my mind. And then if you go and you look at Minnesota, Minnesota is just as sick, right? I mean, you have Everson Griffin anchoring your right side of your defense, but then if you look at what they kind of have going on in their linebacking core, Anthony Barr is a savage. You had a shot at drafting Anthony Barr. You did not. Eric Kendricks is a beast. Animal. So it's all about building that front 7 to get pressure on quarterbacks because that's what changes games. You knock a quarterback out, next thing you know, you're limping around with I don't know, your second string guy. You can win these games. For me, it's learn from these defenses that are brand new to this year's playoffs. The teams that weren't there last year, look at what they did and try to not necessarily copy it, but emulate it, right? Make it ferocious. Make it aggressive. Get guys who want to get to the ball. I mean, Nick Bosa is a guy who the 49ers drafted. That's a cornerstone player. That's a franchise guy. Do you know what I'm saying? He's turned that, he's basically has cemented and turned that entire defensive line around just with his presence alone. You know, the guy's an absolute beast. Watching the 49ers Seahawks game on Sunday night was just a treat because he was everywhere. He was all over the field. Like, that's a rangy, speedy guy who once he grabs you, he's not letting go. You don't have anybody like that on Detroit. There's nobody like that. So you need to go get guys that kind of fit this new profile and be able to plug them in. And I think if you can get your defense right, because we talked about it, the offense wasn't the problem this year. You know, the offense actually looked good. It looked capable. I don't like what you have for running back, and you're going to have to, again, retool this offensive line, which it seems like this offensive line is never complete. But the offense wasn't the issue. You, again, have to go and invest more money in your defense, which took up a buttload of your salary cap last year when you went out in free agency and then what you drafted. So for me, it is addressing that front seven.
Ooh, I can't wait. You know, the season ended, and we're already looking at the draft. We're looking at next year's training camp. I can't wait. It is with the NFL never ending, and it's been fun, man. Look, 40 minutes, we just started, and we're already breaking down everything for next year. It's going to be tough, man. It could go either way. That's why if you're a Lions fan, it's crazy. It could literally go either way, where in 12 months, we could be looking at a complete overhaul, or we could be looking at maybe finally building on something, and it's going to be fascinating to see. Starting with the NFL draft. Look here at Doc and Jock. We'll bring you all the information. We'll definitely break it down, and we'll present as many options as we can for the number 3 draft pick. It's going to be fascinating. Please, Bob Quinn, do your homework and don't mess this one up. We're going to give love to our sponsors. Come right back, and then we're going to break down the Michigan game. Michigan loses to Alabama in tremendous fashion. Kept it close. 2-point lead. Congrats. You know, you got a halftime lead out of it. Not too bad. You played a good half. But against Alabama, you needed a complete 60-minute game, and it didn't happen. So let me give love to the sponsors that make it possible for Doc and Jock to keep the lights on and the studio mics hot here in our Sterling Heights studios. And the 2 sponsors of this week's podcast are the Motor City Pawnbrokers and Flick Chat, the Detroit sports' newest chat headquarters. The Motor City Pawnbrokers are the one-stop pawn shop when you're looking for quality, brand name new, and pre-owned merchandise with locations in Detroit, Ferndale, Roseville, and Warren. Their mission is to deliver exceptional value. For all information regarding the deals and what's going on at the Motor City Pawnbrokers, today visit MotorCityPawnbrokers.com. And if you're in the area, stop in. Mark and the crew, they're dedicated to providing great customer service and changing the stigma associated with pawn shops. And if you do go into one of the 4 locations, tell them Doc and Jock in the Detroit Sports Podcast sent you. Again, today, visit MotorCityPawnbrokers.com. If you've agreed or disagreed with anything that Adam and I have said regarding the Detroit Lions, head on over to the Flick Chat application. All you got to do, go to your favorite app store, whether it be on Google or via your iPhone, and type in Flick Chat, and within moments, you're going to be entered into Detroit Sports' newest headquarters. What do we do over there? We have great sports debates. You can create your own forum. It's a large group chat application where all the hosts here on the podcast get in, and we debate, and we throw out topics regarding the Lions, Pistons, Red Wings, Tigers. You can create your own forum and bring to the table all your hot takes, all your interesting notions as to who the Detroit Lions should draft, and it's really fun. You can interact with other fans here in Detroit, or if you're a big fan of podcasts, you can download and listen to your favorite podcast right there from the Flick Chat application. So get in today. Don't miss out. Detroit Sports' newest headquarters, the Flick Chat application. Mercifully, cuz Michigan season has ended. 4-loss season, 9-4. You don't get that 10th win. Did you see that stat, cuz? 9 consecutive seasons for Nick Saban with 11 wins. How on earth did Michigan State not give that guy the dough? You had him. You were right there. You had the man. You had the man with the weird glasses back in the 90s. I saw him coach. I was there. He was there. Bobby Williams took his team to Florida to defeat Florida. and get to 10 wins at Michigan State after Nick Saban left. You didn't pay the man. You didn't show him the love. You didn't treat him the way you needed to. You could have been LSU. You could have been Alabama. You could have been. Maybe at the end of the day, he might have got you there for a couple of years and took a job in the NFL. He might have maybe never got there, but you blew the chance. Nick Saban, one of the greatest all-time coaches, he came through East Lansing, and you didn't secure the man. You didn't take care of him. You let him leave. And at the end of the day, what a disaster that ended up being for Michigan State. But that's here nor there. At the end of the day, we'll live vicariously through Nick Saban in that he went out and defeated Jim Harbaugh. And then the best part is that he's still running up the score, scoring touchdowns on Jim Harbaugh, which the announcers talked about like, what's going on here? Like, this is kind of something where maybe against other opponents he might have taken a knee. But hey, if you got to stop him. Quite frankly, that's the job. I never begrudge a coach for running it up. Hell, it's fun. If you got a team that's going to pound on someone, walk it into the end zone, man. It looks good. The game in itself was entertaining for the first half, but I don't think once people dove into the second half, once Alabama took the lead for good, I don't think people really, really believed that Michigan was going to keep up, especially with that first play. I mean, literally, because the entire internet was like, all right, a deep play's coming. The entire world knew it. I knew it. You knew it. Everybody knew it. And what happens? Alabama gets the ball, Jerry Jeudy, 85-yard touchdown. And the fascinating part was you had a freshman in the secondary trying to cover Jerry Jeudy. What the hell? Okay. All right. Don Brown's defense, man. Again, at the end of the day, par for the course. That's why everybody picked Alabama to win, is that Michigan in big games just doesn't raise their level to the expectation that you would want to go out there and compete in a Citrus Bowl against Alabama. So for those of you that wanted Alabama, I don't know why. I think that was a guaranteed loss, and it's par for the course.
Harbaugh wanted Alabama.
No, you didn't.
Harbaugh wanted Nick Saban. He built this game up like they were going to play for the national championship.
That's all nonsense.
Harbaugh wanted to test himself.
Yeah.
And you know what? He got embarrassed.
Exactly.
He got embarrassed. Like, you are not on par with the greats in the game.
And here's the worst part.
As a coach, you're just not. You're light years behind.
And here's the most infuriating part if you're a Michigan fan. Yeah, good. Jim Harbaugh is a good placekeeper. He's not going to take your program to the he's not going to take your program to the dumpster. But Alabama didn't bring the entire party to the table. Half their guys that were juniors decided, it's going to sit this one out. You didn't have the full complement. You didn't have Tua.
Bro,
you didn't have
had
the people.
A backup quarterback. You had at least 3 defensive players that were brand new playing. No, this was what they said the worst Alabama team in 5 years. And they blew the doors off you.
Yeah, exactly.
They blew the doors off you. Like, cool, you came out and you played slightly competitive for a half. And then Alabama was like, cool, all right, we're done toying around with you. We're going to show you how it's really done. And then they smoked you. They smoked you. And you want to get a little bit more in depth with this. Michigan brings its senior quarterback, the guy who was supposed to help revolutionize this program, help take it to that next level. This was supposed to be the year, right? These are all Jim Harbaugh's recruits. This was supposed to be the national championship year. Shea Patterson was supposed to be special. Bro, he went 17 for what? I think it was like 37. Yeah, 17 for 37 and 2 INTs. The guy didn't even break 250 yards. The argument could be made he might have been the worst move made by Jim Harbaugh in his 5-year tenure here at Michigan. The argument could be made he is the most crippling move made by Jim Harbaugh in the last 5 years. If you think about it, as a program, if you take your lumps early, you generally build and grow from that. So by the time you've got guys who are seniors on this team, they've gone through it, and those young guys got early reps. That way they get a little bit better. They mature a little bit faster, and it puts your program in a much, much better spot. Jim Harbaugh played QB carousel with a ton of different guys, whether it be Wilton Spate, whether it be Jake Rudock, or whether it be going to bat and trying to shuffle Shea Patterson in here through the transfer portal. You could make the argument that Dylan McCaffrey is the best quarterback on this roster. When we gave our previews for the season, you and I talked about it, and the conversation was that was being had by many who were out at camp was that Dylan McCaffrey is that guy. He's that deal. Yet Shea Patterson, not sure what he was promised, Shea Patterson got the nod for the majority of the year. And if you go back to the beginning of the year, when this offense looked like absolute butt, he was fumbling the ball all over the place. He did not look comfortable. Apparently, he was dealing with an injury, which makes no sense to me why you're going to play a player who's injured and it's going to cost your team. Yet, you have a guy who might be a little bit ahead of the curve and could possibly help your program out in Dylan McCaffrey. And plus, those reps are important. The thing with McCaffrey, this is my big concern about him, is he seems to get hurt in a lot of big games. He can't take the big pop. So what do you got to do? You can work with that. You just got to protect him. You got to protect him, and you just make sure you're like, hey, you get to the sideline, you get out of bounds, or hey, you slide, avoid the big hit. So it's my biggest concern with Lamar Jackson. Lamar Jackson likes to run a little bit too much between the tackles for me, and likes to take guys head on a little bit too much. As you've seen, as the season has progressed, he's gotten better at veering to the sideline and stepping out of bounds. But all that being said, you can work with a guy who gets banged up a little bit. All right? Shea Patterson, it just didn't work. Whatever it was, it didn't work. And yeah, that offense with Gaddis looked okay. Showed he showed the ability to mature in his role. I think when this season started, we hammered him. But as the year kind of went along, things got better. And you could see that there's a making of some decent offense here. It's just going to be interesting how it all translates going forward. Michigan was embarrassed. Jim Harbaugh's not anywhere close to the level of Nick Saban. We talked about it pre-show. When you really look at the college football landscape, it is really and truly, it's the SEC and the ACC. And it's the 2 or 3, sometimes 4 programs from those two conferences. It's Clemson in the ACC, and then really it's Alabama, it's LSU, and really that's about it. Florida hasn't really been relevant for a little bit now. And then you take a step back, you have your next set of conferences, which will include the Big Ten because of Ohio State and only because of Ohio State. And then maybe what is it, the Pac-12 or the Big 12 because of Oklahoma. Oklahoma's been there a couple times. And then after that, it's like everybody else. So you're like, if you're a Michigan fan, you need to realize where you place. You're not even in the second tier, right? You can't even claim that you belong with the likes of an Ohio State. Ohio State beats your ass every single year. I mean, when you really look at the Big Ten and you look at the Big Ten landscape, honestly, you finished in 6th place in the Big Ten. All right. Ohio State was 13-1. Penn State was 11-2. After that, Wisconsin was 10-4. Minnesota was 11-2. Iowa was 10-3. You're there 9-4. You know what I'm saying? Like you're not even that good in your own conference.
And so the question that people are asking is, how is it that the quarterback whisperer can't get a quarterback to play well? Shea Patterson was missing passes all over the place. It was a situation in which you realize, wow, if Michigan had a decent quarterback, and I'll say it again, I think they could have had a special year this year. You know, Gaddis came in, and it seemed like the offense was respectable. An offense that went out there and competed and moved the football a little bit and actually took that step, and you finally got to that point. But at the end of the day, if Jim Harbaugh is not going to pick the right quarterback, you need that special quarterback. What's taking so long? Does it take 5 years to assess talent and figure out what it's going to take? And you and I were talking, like you said before, when Michigan gets there, unfortunately, the teams like Clemson, Alabama, Ohio State, they're just going to keep taking the next step forward. So if you don't progress fast enough, all you're doing is just falling further and further behind. Michigan, you know, at the end of the day, is not Alabama where you can just keep churning out talent. You're going to lose a significant portion of your team to graduation or to the transfer portal. So you got to pick a quarterback, if it's Milton or McCaffrey, that has to show up on game day. September 5th is against Washington. That's not a cupcake.
Yep.
That's not a cupcake. You can start the year with a loss. And, you know, year 6 of Harbaugh and you lose? Oh, I just think that in terms of Michigan, yeah, you got some nice young running backs. The offense kind of looks like it's put together. But at the end of the day, you probably got to upgrade that defense. You got to move on from Don Brown. Not to say that he's not serviceable, but he's not championship caliber. And that's what Michigan deserves across the board. If they're going to compete with Ohio State, if they're going to compete nationally, is you need championship level coaching from the head coach down to the coordinators, down to the, you know, strength and conditioning people. You need elite talent. all across the board and right there. And currently for Michigan, it's just not there. And that's why when you look at it right now, you're basically a 3-4 loss program perennially. And that's not what people want. And unfortunately, the whole notion of, well, who can we get better? At the end of the day, your job is at Michigan to find the guy that's going to be the next Dabo Swinney. Your job is to go out and find the next hot young guy, pay him a bunch of money, and move that program into this new decade, 2020. If it's not Harbaugh.
Dude, Ryan Day looks really good.
Exactly.
Do you know what I'm saying?
I'm saying within the next 3-4 years, you could be looking at the early portion of this decade, a new head coach at Michigan because of the fact that the heat's getting hotter, the expectations are not being met, and the strength that he brings to the table is not being solidified. If he gets this next quarterback wrong, you could potentially lose Milton. He'll obviously, if it's McCaffrey, he'll move on because he's not going to sit for 2 more years.
No.
He's not going to want to play just 1 year.
No.
He'll move on, and then if McCaffrey doesn't hit, you now basically have your whole tenure flushed down the toilet.
You've essentially had Jake Rudock, and you've had Jake Rudock,
And that's it.
And that was it. So I want to go back to the quarterback real quick. I want to stick with that for a quick second. So a friend of ours, you can follow him at D-Town Sports Chat. I was direct messaging with him yesterday. We're talking about the Michigan football game, and we're talking about the program as a whole. And he said to me, this is what he said. He said, started talking with a lot of current and former SEC coaches at a QB club. And I thought that was really interesting. He's like, Michigan's light years away from a national championship.
Yeah.
Like let that sink in, right? Because of that one position.
A universe away.
So he lives in Florida. He's originally from here. He's a transplant. Lives in Florida, and he goes to these different QB clubs and talking with different SEC coaches. So the book's out there.
Yeah.
The book's out there. Like, they don't have a quarterback who can do a damn thing.
Right.
Like, and you can tell, right? So look at Justin Fields, right? Justin Fields was not good enough to start at Georgia.
Woo-hoo.
Goes to Ohio State,
Lights it up.
and sets the Big Ten on fire.
All right.
Do you know what I'm saying? Like, just let it set in for a little bit. I mean, Joe Burrow, I was watching the LSU game on what was that, Saturday? I'm like, Joe Burrow had 51 touchdowns. I'm like, I wonder if there's a chance he gets to 60. They like flashed it real quick. He had 51 touchdowns. I'm like, I wonder if there's a chance he gets to 60. Dude ends up going bananas, threw 8 touchdowns in this game. And I think he's sitting at like 55 right now, because I think at the time he had thrown for 4. And I was like, I wonder if he can get to 60 in the next basically game and a half. Dude's at like 55 right now. So he's got a chance to throw 60 touchdowns in a college football season. What? Like, that's a quarterback. That's nuts, right? And you got Shea Patterson over here, who threw 23 touchdowns with he almost pulled a Jameis Winston. Almost turned the ball over just as many times as he threw a touchdown this year. It's pathetic. That's pathetic. Like, Ole Miss is an SEC country, right? Ole Miss didn't even want Shea Patterson. Ole Miss didn't want him. Nobody in the SEC wanted him. The book was out on him. Yet Jim Harbaugh was like, this is our dude. This is our guy. We got to go get him. We want him. We need him. He's going to make our program better. Nah, bro. He didn't.
So I got to ask you this before we get out of here, okay? Jim Harbaugh is not a terrible head coach. This is a head coach that's going to get you perennially 9 wins, 10 wins. But at the end of the day, no trips to Indy, no big-time accomplishments. If this continues for the next year, 2, 3 years, where you get 9 wins, 10 wins, boatload of money, boatload of hype games and things like that, a lot of positivity, a lot of guys graduating, but no accomplishments. Can Michigan go into the next decade and keep this coach around despite any real accomplishments?
No. For me, next year is make or break, right? You know what you're going to have after year 6. Like, you know what you have right now. But if you just need some confirmation because you think Dylan McCaffrey is that quarterback, is that guy who can change your program, then okay, cool. I'll roll the dice with you one more year. We'll see what happens. You're a big name. You're a hot commodity, I guess. So let's see what happens. But no, man, if you can't do anything next year, if Don Brown's not blown out, if you don't revamp this defense and you don't retool this offense just a little bit, tweak it and throw McCaffrey in there and get more production out of everybody, to a man, more production. That goes for Harbaugh as well. To a freaking man. You need more production from everybody. You have to get better at what you're doing. Honestly, there is a talent gap that is like this big, right? Like this big. Because you went up against second and third string guys versus Alabama the other day, and they embarrassed you. Let that sink in.
But doesn't it feel like, though, that Michigan's just like, well, this is what it is. This is the landscape. We'll just keep them.
Oh, Michigan fans feel like that. Which is awful. Like, you shouldn't feel that way. Like, this should not be okay. This should not be how you feel about your program. You know, and to take it to Michigan State, because we opened a little bit with Michigan State talking about how they ended up losing on Nick Saban. I feel like Michigan State fans feel real similar about their program right now. Like, it's okay as long as we can get to a bowl game. No, guys, don't feel like that. You know, a few years ago, you were representing the Big Ten in the college football playoff. You should want more, demand more, expect more. Okay, I get it. We're not SEC country. I get it. They have a better longevity and they do a lot better job recruiting. But you know what? You put that on your coaches. You put that on those staffs, and you say, you go out there and you get us guys. Get us guys who are gonna make a difference at the next level. Do it. And you know, we've talked about it. You don't always need a choir boy in your football locker room. You know what I'm saying? Sometimes you need a dude with a little bit of an edge. Sometimes you need a dude who gets a little bit nasty. I'm not saying you need Aaron Hernandez going out there killing people in the dead of night while you're at Florida. I'm not saying you need that. But what I'm saying is you can go out and get a guy with a little bit of an edge, a little bit of a gruff demeanor, and a guy who could maybe set a tone for a program. You don't have that. Neither one of our programs have that.
Nope.
That's embarrassing.
And we're recording this January 2nd. There's a big chance that Mark D'Antonio may keep his staff. I don't see anything.
I don't understand.
I don't hear it in the whispers. I don't see that anybody's been fired. I don't see any hot names that are being talked about. Mark D'Antonio may be that stubborn and just brings back that staff again.
We can reinvent the wheel, guys. We're gonna do it all over again.
Great podcast. Always enjoy recording with Adam. Follow Adam on Twitter at AdamRSTROZ. Follow the network at Detroit Podcast. Feel free, message your thoughts regarding our discussion today about the Lions and the state of the Michigan Wolverine program. For Adam, the Jock Strozinski, I am John Macaroon. Thanks, everybody. We'll find you again next week on Thursday. You can find the Detroit Sports Podcast anywhere your favorite podcasts are hosted. Thanks, everybody.
This was Locker Room Talk.
Second dick.
Sorry, Detroit. Didn't quite work out.
And all I can say is Detroit Sports Podcast scores.
I hear voices in my head. They counsel me. They understand. They talk to me. They talk to me.